everyone! I'm so excited, but first and foremost I've got to apologise for my voice because my allergies have been so bad this morning. It's just ripped my throat to shreds, but I guess that's quite in keeping with the type of book that we're going to be looking at today, ripping things to shreds, because of course it is Alan Roberts' The Beauty of Horror 4 creature feature. I am absolutely thrilled after all these months of waiting to finally have a copy in my hands. I knew as soon as Alan said his next book was going to be about horror movies that it was just going to be the pinnacle of colouring books for me, because you know what I'm like with horror. And I was so right, because seriously, I don't think I need to buy any more books now. This one is my absolute favourite of his and probably my absolute favourite of all colouring books that I have. So, you know, I'm absolutely elated with it. Like, I knew it was going to be good, but my first look through, I had this huge smile on my face at all the movies that I recognised, how Alan had depicted them in his own signature style, and the humour that is injected into some of them. It's just priceless. Okay, I'm going to get on with the review, but if you think that's me done flailing and fangirling over this book, you are sorely mistaken. You know me in horror. I just got a cartoon-style Lecter tattoo. I have a bunch of horror t-shirts. The very room that I sit in now is a bit of an ongoing horror shrine of sorts. I've got a mixture of multicoloured art supplies and pink girly wallpaper, all alongside big posters of classic horror movies, my horror minifigures, a 40,000 bead diamond painting of horror icons that I completed by hand. I'm thinking maybe that I should do a silent flip through of this book for those of you who don't want to listen to me prattle on about movies and random horror trivia for the next half hour. If I do make one, I'll leave the link for it in the description. Right, so let's have a look at the cover. It is a removable dust jacket which has the blood red foiling that we all know from this series of books, and it's got a taste of the creepiness that you'll find inside. The actual inside of the cover is also colourable, so you could use markers on that. It's really thick. So that is the cover itself. On the back, once I've got this back on, dust jackets really annoy me. On the back, we've got the bit of synopsis here saying that Alan Robert continues his best-selling colouring book series with Beauty of Horror 4 creature feature. Follow fan favourite Giuliana and her undead pals as they mischievously reimagine some of the most iconic horror movies ever to hit the silver screen. And while they're turning out Hollywood on its head, be on the lookout for all of the blood-soaked film props they've dropped along the way. So we're going to have a bit of a mystery, hide-and-seek thing going on. There's over 80 pages of intricate hand-drawn designs for you to sink your fangs into, so pass the popcorn and find out why Nerdist have hailed this as the world's creepiest adult colouring book. And then there's a few links there that you can find them on Facebook. So let's have a look inside. So of course we have the title page that you can colour in. We've got some of Freddy's knife gloves, we've got a few hockey masks, a couple of chainsaws, and then inside, let me move you across so that you can see everything. We have the copyright information page, notice from the publisher, with another little thing that you can colour here, which is almost like something out of a zombie film. You imagine all these hands reaching through the windows to grab at you. Then we have this really awesome nameplate page, The Beauty of Horror 4 creature feature, starring, and then you'll be putting your name there, and Giuliana's there just looking back at you really creepily. Okay, so these are the lost props. We're in the film studio, as you can see, and these are the things that we're going to have to be looking out for throughout the whole of the book. We've got 5 planchettes, 6 bone saws, 4 pig masks, 5 puzzle boxes, 10 knife gloves, 7 bloody hatchets, 6 bags of skull popcorn, and 2 skeleton cats. So you'll have to find these sprinkled all the way throughout the book. So let's read the little introduction. Lights, camera, action. Just when you thought it was safe to scream, Giuliana hijacked the silver screen. Thumb through the pages and see what she's done. She's stolen the spotlight from monsters you love. Giuliana and the gang have been flipping the script on the killers and creatures from nightmarish flicks. This mischievous mutiny is destroying their scenes. Keep it quiet on set while they fulfill their schemes. Can you count all the films they've torn apart? Colour them all, but before you start, track down the props that have fallen behind. There's no telling what will happen if there's one you can't find. So here's our first illustration, and how better to kick off the book than a double page spread from one, if not the best horror film of all time, The Exorcist. I'm just constantly in awe of Alan's talent, but when it's paired with something that I know and love, it just ramps up my appreciation for his work 100-fold. As you can see, we have Fathers Merrin and Karras presiding over the exorcism here on the left, along with the demon Pazuzu, who is possessing Regan, the little girl played by Linda Blair. As you can see, we have all the elements from the scene here. We've got Regan's twisted head, the padded bedposts, even the infamous crucifix. Now, it's worth mentioning, just in case this is the first Beauty of Horror book you've come across, and if so, where have you been? That Alan has a cast of original characters that he uses throughout the series. The star of the show is Giuliana, but her band of macabre friends and pets will never be too far away from her mischief. This is not meant to be a realistic look of the actors that you'll see in the movies, besides of course the poses, the costume, the hairstyles. Instead, we have Giuliana and her crew of miscreants taken to the stage almost as a fun dress-up playtime and acting out all of these classic scenes from horror, thriller and sci-fi. Couple of lesser known factoids about The Exorcist. It is Warner Brothers' highest grossing film ever, if you account for rates of inflation, which really surprised me after all the fuss that there was when it was released and it being banned and things like that. Also, there's a blink and you'll miss it Easter egg. The Japanese word taskete appears scrawled on a banner in the language lab when Father Karras is listening to Regan's demon tape. This scene directly precedes Karras's visit to Regan at home when the words "help me" appear spontaneously on her skin. The word taskete translates to "help me." So here's another famous scene from the film, cut from the theatrical release, the crab walk. What I love most about this is the humour that I touched on in the introduction. Alan's put her on a treadmill with this advertising burst like something you'd see in a junk mail magazine or on a shopping channel, and it's just a really fun spin on the scene to make you chuckle. And here we have one of Giuliana's friends dressed as Freddy Krueger, using his knife gloves to provide a trim for what could be one of the many horror werewolves. It could be the Wolfman, American Werewolf in London, or even Peach Fuzz from the lesser known horror Creep. If you've never seen it, it's a really unsettling film on Netflix, and it's got a great sequel as well. Now here's another double page spread, and it's totally flipped the script. Instead of it being us going to watch the latest Scarefest on the big screen, our faves have settled in with their skull popcorn to watch us. Now you should recognise most of these characters, but let's go through them anyway. So up near the back we have Jason Voorhees of Friday the 13th fame. I believe this is Lon Chaney from the 1927 silent film London After Midnight, but I could be wrong. That film is actually a lost film, having been destroyed in the MGM fire of 1967. Then we've got Valak the Nun from the Conjuring universe, Ghostface from the Scream franchise, and the Phantom of the Opera, again played by Lon Chaney in 1925. Now there's an octopus type creature here, which I'll assume represents the 1977 creature feature Tentacles, but hopefully Alan will put me right if I've got any of these wrong. Down here we've got Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, good old Freddy, Frankenstein, and this one is Metaluna Mutant from the 1955 sci-fi film This Island Earth. Over here we've got Gillman from Creature of the Black Lagoon, Wolfman played by Lon Chaney Jr. in 1941, Mike Myers of course from Halloween, shouldn't call him Mike Myers, that's the actor's name isn't it, Michael Myers from Halloween, good guy Chucky from Child's Play, and finally my favourite, Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter, trussed up in his straitjacket and mask. I'm not sure how he's going to eat this popcorn, but maybe Gillman can poke it through the bars with his claw. Now here's a spread from the classic Hitchcock film Psycho, and of course the recent TV series as well. I love how Giuliana has enlisted the help of her friend to change the sign to her name. I love the blowing leaves across, giving you that chilly autumnal feel, and of course the iconic house there, looming up on the hill, accessed by a long and haphazard flight of steps. This original house still exists in Universal Studios, so who knows if Norman and Mother are still inside somewhere. Continuing the Psycho theme, here's Norma Bates herself, knitting her beloved Norman a little gift for being her #1 son. If you've seen the original Psycho, you'll remember the hair-raising scene where we finally meet Mother. If not, I won't spoil it for you. Another instantly recognisable classic here, Giuliana covered in pig's blood at the school prom from Stephen King's Carrie. This was released as a competition download a couple of months back, and I had the honour of choosing the winner, who was Black Cat Colouring. Absolutely fantastic colouring work there. Now, everyone should recognise these pages featuring the chest-bursting xenomorph from Alien, and if you've ever been pregnant, you all know the feeling of a super strong kick that feels a bit like this is going to happen. I'm not a big sci-fi fan, to be honest, but there's no denying that this is one of the most notorious monster creatures in recent history. Again, we've got that comical advert burst, showing Giuliana in full space pest control kit having a whale of a time. This page would look fantastic in glowing toxic green, something I hope that I can pull off when I get to colouring it. Now, how about this for a lineup? Bloodsuckers from a few different Dracula movies, starting here with the Bela Lugosi from the 1931 film, Nosferatu, of course, with his creeping shadow on the staircase that inspired many a horror film ever since, Gary Oldman's depiction from the 1992 film, and finally, I'm pretty sure that this is Christopher Lee from the 58 version. I love how Alan has put them together in this row of villains to be picked out from the lineup. It's so much fun to have this composition rather than, just a portrait on its own. Another Stephen King classic here, Pet Sematary. Despite me declaring it a classic, actually, I only saw it for the first time last year and I haven't watched the remake at all. To be honest, I love these illustrations much more than I enjoyed the film. It's not one of my favourites. Here's Giuliana with Church the cat, and I can't work out whether she's dug his carcass up or buried him alive. It could be either, knowing her. Now we have the Invisible Man looking quite irritated at this naughty boy pulling at his bandages. Now, as you can see, we've got the laboratory setting where he experimented to create the invisibility serum. This was originally a H.G. Wells novel that was adapted for the big screen in 1933, and more recently in the 2000 film Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon and the 2020 film starring Elizabeth Moss. There's quite a few details to colour on this spread, lots of glass vials and lab equipment, so much potential for neon potions and all sorts. This next illustration pays homage to the final scene from Friday the 13th, in which Jason Voorhees' decomposing corpse bursts from Camp Crystal Lake to drag poor final girl Alice down into the depths. Here's some fun facts for you. Over the course of the Friday 13th sequence of movies, 4 people fall whilst running, 10 cars won't start, 11 people are thrown through windows, 12 couples are killed in flagrante, and there's a total of 166 deaths. Jason actually died in 6 out of the 11 movies, so you can see how many times he's been reincarnated. Another water dweller here, creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm not sure what I'd do if I went for a spot of peaceful fishing and hooked this monstrosity. Put it this way, you wouldn't see me for dust. Yet another illustration that's going to be amazing in full colour, but to be honest, they all will. I'm making a pact here and now to colour every single page in this book, so I need you all to hold me to it, because you know what I'm like for saying I'm going to do something and never getting round to it. But I can't see me putting this down for a while yet, so do look out for these completed pages starting to fill up my Instagram over the coming weeks. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms now, a Grindhouse film from '53 that features a dinosaur released from its frozen hibernation by an atomic bomb test in the Arctic Circle. Of course, like any other gigantic stomping monster, it ends up wreaking havoc in New York City. Why does everything in Movieland seem to happen there? But it looks like Giuliana's having a great time anyway. These next two are from cult classic The Evil Dead, the trapdoor scene being one of the most famous images from the film. If you haven't seen the remake of I would strongly recommend it. It's a rare remake that I actually enjoyed more than the original. But the basic story is a bunch of teenagers go vacation into an isolated forest cabin. They find a creepy human skin-bound book called the Necronomicon and a cassette tape of freaky incantations. They play it because why wouldn't you play it? And that awakens a legion of demonic spirits that waste no time possessing the teens. Here's Alan's depiction of main character and hero Ash, who chops off his possessed hand with a chainsaw and attaches said chainsaw to the stump as a handy weapon. See what I did there? Another Hitchcock classic now, The Birds. You'll probably recognise the iconic image of lead actress Tippi Hedren trapped in the telephone box as a rapid flock of birds ambushes her. Giuliana and her friend, on the other hand, look positively gleeful at being chased by the crazed birds, but each to their own. This is another film that I only saw within the last couple of years, Hellraiser. It's about a guy who opens a door to another dimension and has his body torn to pieces by sadomasochistic creatures known as Cenobites, led by this guy, Pinhead. He's holding what looks like a Rubik's Cube, but it could well be the Lament configuration. this box actually looks a bit more like it. It's the box that opens up the alternate dimension. I love this play on words with the Cenobites man in the stall at the bake sale, giving out cupcakes dangerously spiked with pins. Now, I bet you remember these gruesome creatures from The Thing, an 80s film starring Kurt Russell, who leads a group of American researchers in Antarctica. The Thing itself is a parasite that can take over and imitate any other organism, so you never know if your best friend is real or a meat suit being controlled by the Thing. You only find that out when your friend suddenly morphs into one of these things, and by then it's probably too late unless you've got a flamethrower handy. Now for my pages, I was so excited that The Shining was included in this book because it's one of my all-time favourites, and I actually watched it again whilst I was colouring this to properly set the mood. I started off on this side and I coloured all of the carpet pattern first, although I feel like I should have used a lighter brown instead of espresso to properly match the colours, but I was concerned there wouldn't be as much contrast with the pumpkin orange. I get a bit neurotic about making things as close to the reference as possible when colouring. Like the Grady twins that I coloured from book 2, I spent ages creating the wallpaper pattern from the original clip. Of course, I tried to match Jack's clothes colours as close as possible. Then I blacked out the background with gouache paint and printed those famous lines from the typewriter scene. I did feel like a bit of a psycho stalker sat there cutting and sticking all these letters, but I suppose it's all in the creepy spirit of things. Now on this side, I added in the tiles from the movie, the still that I was referencing, which is why they're clearly not Alan's original lines because they're so wobbly. The robe took the longest to colour as I was trying to make it look more like a toweling fabric and less like silk, which is my default technique for colouring clothing with folds. Now I decided to try and make her look a little bit more human by developing the eyes a little bit, but she's still got razor teeth, so make of that what you will, poor Wendy. I must admit that I was a bit confused at which parts of the splintered door to colour, and I'm pretty sure it's still not quite right, but I messed about with it so much I was thoroughly done at that point. As you can probably tell, I used the Molotow liquid chrome to paint the metals. I'll just do a little bit of a backward and forward for you there. And it took quite a while to dry. I used a white acrylic base on the bottom. I'm not 100% happy with how it's dried in places, and I think I'll have to cover these pages in sticky back plastic to prevent any rub, but I still think it looks really, really cool, and I'm chuffed with how the pages have turned out. Here's another scene from The Shining, maybe one of the most iconic, with the sea of blood cascading from the elevator, and here's Delbert Grady, father of the creepy twins that haunt the Overlook Hotel. He corrected them, didn't he? Sorry if you're not getting any of these references or you're thoroughly bored at this point. It's clear I'm a massive horror nerd and I've spent so much time researching all these illustrations just for one review, but I decided to go all in. Now, I think this is going to be the next one that I do because it's a bit less complicated after the double spread that I just did. And it's another of those horrors that I've watched many times over since I was a teenager and saw it in the cinema, The Ring. So here's Giuliana as Samara, clambering out of the well with her freaky snapping limbs and contortions. That movie might not be a classic horror, but boy, is it an effective one. The cold colour palette of the movie gives you that bone-deep chill, and the eerie underwater sound effects just make my skin crawl. I'm looking forward to keeping that in mind when I colour this, probably in a greenish tinged monochrome palette that's just as washed out and water-rotted as Samara in the film. Now this one made me chuckle because it's so out of the blue. Never did I think I would see Finding Nemo in this book, but here it is. I suppose it would feel like a horror movie if you're just swimming along and all of a sudden surrounded by angry piranha. Chucky has made his way from the cinema at the start of the book over to this page, and with another unexpected Disney tie-in, he's murdered Toy Story's Woody in cold blood. Where Alan gets these ideas from, I don't know, but please keep them coming. Giuliana is boxed up as a good girl here, ready for you to pick up from the toy aisle. I wonder if it includes the axe and knife accessories as well as the skull bow. Did you know Chucky's full name, Charles Lee Ray, is derived from notorious killer Charles Manson, John F. Kennedy assassin Lee Harvey Oswald, and Martin Luther King's assassin James Earl Ray? And the original working title for the film was Batteries Not Included. Now, I was super surprised to see this included in the book, with it being quite a recent horror, Hereditary. You can see the symbol of demon Paimon on the telegraph pole that decapitates poor Charlie, or in this case, Giuliana. The first time I watched this, I went on release day and I was so excited for a good horror. I came away really, really disappointed, as I always seem to do with Ari Aster films. I thought it was really good up to the final act and then it totally lost me. But since then, I've watched it again and I've got a bigger appreciation for the story now that I understand what the hell was going on in them final scenes. So here in the thick of the jungle, we have Predator holding Giuliana's head aloft and looking a little bit like me in the morning before a cup of tea, to be honest. This spread is going to be perfect for bright, vibrant, exotic colours, a real tropical palette. I can imagine doing some partial cover-ups of Predator with an acrylic paint to try and emulate that transparent effect of the creature as well. So we're back with Jason again, and of course, what else would you do when Crystal Lake freezes over than have a good game of hockey? He's already got the mask for it. I wonder why his weapon of choice was a machete rather than a stick in the films. I imagine a well-aimed puck could probably kill someone if it caught them wrong. Anyhow, lots of snow and ice to colour here. I'd want to restrict this palette to icy colours only, like frosted blues, aqua, and maybe a hint of purple. Now, you might have seen this one before, as it was a free download a few months back, and it's a mix-up of several different horror icons. Pennywise, of course, Freddy Krueger's glove, Jason's mask, the Xenomorph's body, Leatherface's bloody apron, and I think Negan's bat, Lucille, as well. Here's another one that made me smile. It's Michael Myers as a paper doll. That famous tagline, "The night he came home," has been adapted to "The night he did laundry." And here he is in his jack-o'-lantern shorts. So not quite as scary in your pumpkin pants, are you, Mikey? So are there any Poltergeist fans here? I'll be honest, I didn't really enjoy it, but this is undeniably a very recognisable image. The girl knelt down with her palms to the TV. This movie has a bit of an urban legend around it, actually, because of the unfortunate deaths of several of the actors that appeared in the franchise. Although, funnily enough, there's no murders or fatalities in the film itself. Now, American Gothic is a well-known Depression-era painting by Grant Wood, depicting a sullen-looking couple stood in front of a farmhouse. But the characters that Alan has drawn are quite different to the ones in the painting. Now, there was a slasher movie of the same name in the late 80s, which this could be inspired by, but again, the characters look quite different, so I'm wondering if Alan got his inspiration from another depiction of the painting, or whether these are just his original creepy characters. This double-page spread is based on They Live, a sci-fi horror from John Carpenter, in which the protagonist discovers through special sunglasses that the ruling class are aliens concealing their appearance as humans in order to manipulate people into hyper-commercialism, breeding, and subliminal messages in mass media. The subliminal messages are to obey, consume, reproduce, and conform. Looks like a touch of social commentary there, I'll say no more. Alan has converted one of the messages into colour, which is an order I can happily get behind. King Kong versus Godzilla in the ultimate standoff here. Can you imagine how big that boxing ring would have to be to accommodate these Goliaths? Now, this was a Japanese kaiju film, meaning giant monsters, from 1962, and I believe a Warner Brothers film of the same name is touted for release next year. This guy reminds me of Reptar from Rugrats. Do any of you remember that cartoon? I used to absolutely love it. A homage to Jaws now, which I watched the other day for about the millionth time. So here's Giuliana's friend sat on the sinking mask, clutching his rifle as Jaws looms behind him, 3 barrels attached, just like in the movie. Now, the character Quint, played by Robert Shaw, is the boat's captain and is doggedly determined to catch this great white, clearly inspired by Captain Ahab from Moby Dick, who obsessively dedicated his life to catching the whale. Quint's vessel is even named Orca, which is the only natural enemy of the great white shark. So, a little factoid for you there. Here's Giuliana having a nice little swim framed by a shark's jawbone and teeth. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre now, and in a turn of events, Giuliana is the one in charge of the cooking pot, and it seems Leatherface is for lunch. Loving her little chef's hat and pinny, here's the result, canned and ready for sale. Bubba's Texas Chili. It's all in the meat. Don't skimp on the meat. The soundtrack for this film has no musical instruments. Instead, they use sounds that animals would hear in the slaughterhouse. Ugh. Amityville 2, The Possession, is a cracking horror that I first saw as a young teenager. Watching Sonny slowly descend into evil and the way that his features seem to transform and rot is really disturbing to watch. Here he is tucking into lunch, though this doesn't happen in the movie, so I'm just assuming it is him and not a totally different film. But of course, this is the famous house that has been sold to Giuliana and her gang, not a housewarming party I would want to be invited to. Now I love this simple double page spread of the famous Amityville windows, Giuliana peeking out and the swarm of flies that attack the priest in the movie. We're warned to stay off the moors as we make our way from Amityville to Yorkshire, England. I love how Alan has drawn Giuliana and her friend in their duffel coats, peering over their shoulder in the moonlight as they hike across the heath. And here's the werewolf himself, but instead of being shot, as David is at the end of the film, it's the wolf that's doing the shooting. Now hopefully he's got enough silver bullets to take them down. A Godzilla Rampage scene now, shown from the ground as he stomps through the city. I love how Giuliana seems to be spurring him on with her little jolly fist pump, just as he squishes an innocent bystander between his toes. Nice. Now, I recently watched all of the Saw movies again with my son, one every couple of days, and I've been told I look like Billy the Puppet in certain photos, so I feel a bit of an affinity with this guy. Loving the jigsaw pieces and all the traps in the background, the manacled foot, the reverse bear trap, and of course the hacksaw. Here's Billy giving Giuliana a backie on his tricycle. Not sure where they're going, but she looks happy enough anyway. Maybe Billy was dropping her off in the woods to join the Stranger Things gang with her own set of wheels. As you can see, we have all the characters here. Unusually for Alan, they have human faces that aren't rotting away and they're very lifelike to the actors. Now, I've already seen this one coloured on the Facebook group and it looks fantastic. Can't wait to get to this one. Here's the Demogorgon taking his Demodog for a walk in the upside down. Actually, that would have been a really good idea to flip this illustration. And being the responsible primordial demon that he is, he's making sure to pick up after his pet. Now here's a couple of mandala type illustrations featuring several horror elements. The Blair Witch Stickman, Freddy's Claw, Bloody Axe, etc. Not sure why there's two of these, but I suppose you could do them in different colour palettes or something. I would have preferred a different illustration because I'm not too keen on colouring the same thing twice. Now this is a fantastic idea. Giuliana riding the puddles in the paper boat whilst Pennywise looks on. She's even got one of his balloons. It's such an epic spread. I think I'll have to use paints for the boat as it's pretty huge. But I actually love the angle that it's been drawn from. I can't wait to colour it. Did you know that the Duffer Brothers actually wanted to direct this movie, but they were overlooked and went on to create Stranger Things, paying homage to Stephen King? I love this romantic scene between Frankenstein and his bride, surrounded by a heart-shaped frame made from bats and skeletons. Played by Boris Karloff and Elsa Lanchester in the 1935 film. A lot of it was censored for having too much blasphemous imagery, which, okay, you can understand, but amusingly, the Japanese film board censored a scene where a character chases Henry VIII with tweezers because it seemed to be making a fool out of a king. Their words. Do you remember watching Jeff Goldblum slowly decompose as he transformed into a housefly after a scientific experiment gone wrong? Ugh. Well, Giuliana is here emerging from the telepod, having been mutated into an insect hybrid. The Fly is one of the grossest movies. The makeup was absolutely disgusting, but fantastic. Finally, we have King Kong holding Giuliana aloft above the city, just like Delicate Waif and Darrow in the movie. There's a colourable wreath here of the front cover which invites you to put whatever you want in the centre, but that's the end of the book. Apart from these create your own monster pages and of course the colour palette test spread. All the answers to the lost item hunt are in the back, but I won't spoil those. And all that's left is a little advert for the rest of the books in the series, including the brand new Haunt This Journal, which I will be reviewing very soon once I've had the chance to complete a couple of the pages inside. Well, as usual, I'll be putting buy links in the description of this video because I'm sure after seeing this, you will agree it's Alan's best work yet and you'll be clamouring to buy your copy. I hope this review hasn't seemed too indulgent or self-serving, but I really wanted to mix it up with a little bit of trivia and my own enthusiasm for the genre. I hope you've enjoyed it. My only issue is that I want more. I want more movies that I love represented. The Wicker Man, The Silence of the Lambs spread, The Strangers would be a great one because of the creepy masks that they wear. I could go on, but to be honest, Alan, if you are watching, all of this means that you just have to do another movie-themed book at some point. Creature Feature, the sequel, maybe? I had a cool idea, actually, about a book with Alan's interpretations of the Goosebumps books. There's 62 of those, not far off from the amount of pages in a colouring book. Anyway, I don't have to give him ideas. I'm sure he's got so much cool stuff in the pipeline and I cannot wait to see what they are. For now, though, I'm ecstatically happy with this book and desperate to get stuck back in. So thank you so much for watching, everyone, and please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you very soon on Colour with Claire.